Established as an independent investment institution by an act of the National Assembly in May 2011, the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, NSIA, is an investment institution of the Nigerian Federation set up to manage the country's sovereign wealth fund. Joining us now to discuss the achievements and activities of the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority is Uche Orji, Chief Executive Officer, Managing Director, Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, NSIA. Good morning, Uche Orji, and thank you very much for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. You're welcome. Well, you're on the verge of successfully concluding your statutory maximum tenure as Managing Director, CEO of NSIA, the manager of Nigeria's Sovereign Wealth Fund. Well, let's go back to even before the beginning. Tell us how you decided to lead the institution, what motivated you to show interest in this position, and how has it been? How far?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. What motivated me and how far? I think, let me start by going back a bit in history. It was not actually something that was in my range of possible career choices at the time. I received a call from a headhunter and I turned up for an interview and went through an interview process. And then a few months later, I was invited to take up the job. It took almost a year, well, 6 months, I think, maybe slightly more, between the interview happening and taking the job, and almost a year between the headhunter's call and actually moving to the NSIA. But I would say three things made it interesting for me. I think the first is, and for every career choice I've made, I've always kind of went through a 3-point test of, can I do it? Should I do it? And can it be done in the first place? And these were some of the things that were what you might want to call organizing principles about decision making when it comes to career choices. And the most difficult one for me was, can it be done? And given all the history and all the challenges of running such an institution in an emerging market, it's not just Nigeria, and other places, it's also very difficult. But the things that convinced me were that the process itself was very transparent. I didn't know anyone when I walked into the interview room. It was the first time in my life I was meeting the then Minister of Finance, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. I'd never seen her before. My career prior was mostly focused on North America, Europe, and Asia, so I never really had much interaction coming back to Nigeria. So the fact that there was a process that was run without any external influence or even me knowing anybody convinced me that this was serious. The second was also, at the time, it was probably the third opportunity I'd had to come back and serve in one capacity or another, and I thought this was something I could do. And I did tell my family then, I said, look, let's go do this. If you don't, you'll probably abdicate every right to complain if you do not go back and play your own part. And so these were part of what made me take the role. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity because it could have gone anywhere else as well. So the fact that I was given the opportunity is something I'm entirely grateful to the people of Nigeria, to the government, and to the various governments, particularly also this second government that renewed me for a second term, which I think is something that was unprecedented in itself. So I was very grateful. I'm grateful for all of that. How far has it gone? I think so far, so good. The NSIA has proven itself to be, one, a steadily profitable entity, which is important in gaining credibility internally. The NSIA has had catalytic effects in a number of sectors where it wanted to focus on, be it agriculture, be it healthcare, toll roads, financial markets, infrastructure, more recently in tech, and power. It's been very, very catalytic in terms of the role it has played. And I can go through the rest of the interview with specific areas of accomplishment. But I think the third thing is it's also gained significant external credibility. For 7 or 8 years in a row, it's been ranked top quartile by the Sovereign Wealth Fund Institute in terms of transparency and governance, which I think is very important for an entity like ours to gain credibility both at home and abroad. So all of that put together, in my opinion, summarizes how I feel it has gone so far. And being able to also win the support of our stakeholders, particularly the federal government and the state government, for me is a big mark of the fact of it's been accepted domestically as well. So getting to that point for me is a real point of joy. International credibility, domestic credibility, steadily profitable organization with impactful interventions in a number of sectors. Those are things I think one should measure.
Right, it's sort of like sweet sorrow the parting brings, really. And still at the early stage of your work at NSIA, what did you want to achieve for the institution and the stakeholders, and what structures, did you set up to create that enduring and value-adding institution that you have created?
Sorry, Rufai, can you just repeat that? I couldn't hear that clearly about
Okay. What I was talking about was pretty much, the structures you set up to achieve for what you intended to achieve for the stakeholders at an early age, what informed that, what was the whole process behind it and the thinking behind it. And I did say, parting brings some sweet sorrow, like Shakespeare did say, and it is sorrowfully sweet anyway.
Yeah. Everything ends, everything, whether good or bad, everything ends. And I think we're here. So to your question about what institutions and how did we create the structures. So if some of you may recall, maybe certainly Ruben will recall at the beginning of NSIA, it was very controversial, right? It was very, very controversial. When I arrived, it was a kind of a storm about, between the state government and the federal government. And I remember my first interaction at the National Economic Council. That was very terrifying, I must say, because then I realized the most important thing the organization needed was to build credibility internally. You needed to be accepted by all the stakeholders. Don't forget, NSIA has about 112 shareholders, 774 local governments, 36 states, the FCT and the area councils, and the federal government. These are all stakeholders of the NSIA. Winning their trust for me was the first and perhaps the most important challenge. And we went about that by ensuring that we were accountable. We published our accounts every quarter, Pricewaterhouse reviews and then audits, and that gets put up on our website. And we go and discuss with them the performance of the organization, the accounts, every year. The same way you would treat any publicly held entity. You go out there and you explain, this is what I've done with your money, this is how much I've made, this is, So that's the first. Second was we had to provide them instruments of ownership. So we have certificates, uniquely identified certificates showing their, or what you may call their share certificate in the organization. So we treated the annual meeting like you would treat any annual general meeting, where we went there and showed real accountability. So that started to build gradually. It took time, but after the first, second, third year, and they're seeing that the organization is profitable, the Pricewaterhouse, who are auditors, will turn up and provide their statement. That gave them some comfort. That's the first. The second was also translating that internationally. We needed international credibility as well, because 60% of our asset allocation is actually largely international, so declining now to maybe 50%. So we're invested in a bunch of assets, from private equity, public equity, lease type companies, fixed income, treasuries, internationally. We needed also to gain that international credibility. I mean, most people will not probably know this, but at the beginning, it was actually difficult to get some of the service providers to take our money. Because it just felt a bit strange for them. But eventually we managed to gain some of this credibility, and we started to now invest internationally with them. And having the Sovereign Wealth Fund Institute, or the International Forum of Sovereign Wealth Funds, rate us very highly, was extremely important in getting there. And I think it's really down to accountability, transparency in terms of how you present and manage the money of your clients, and treating your stakeholders the way you treat a client. Which for us was very, very important. Now, internally, of course, hiring people, training them, because most of the people that we hired had never done this work before. This business didn't exist. Sovereign wealth fund, okay, on some aspect, it's like any other entity. I think that helped. And then finally, we worked with a lot of international partners, from the DFID to the IFC, which provided us a lot of support, actually, because both the DFID and IFC sponsored a gentleman who was our first head of infrastructure to work with us, Mr. Richard Eckridge, an American. Our CIO was Mr. Hans Peter, who was Swiss at the time. So working with a whole bunch of international partners helped us in some ways in getting some level of acceptance and credibility. But the organization is well built. There are also operational factors. The board was very important, very participatory in many ways in everything that we did. The NSIA board, we had very low limits for what we could approve as management, because we needed to make sure that there was discipline and there was accountability to the board. So the board was extremely important and extremely valuable, from the risk committee, the investment committee, the general and finance committee of the board. All of these were all part of what I believe helped the organization to become really, really stable. And I feel very comfortable with where it is today. And I think it's really well built and should continue from where we have, where I think the current management team is stopping.
Okay, so we have just about 2 minutes.
And I get the point about bittersweet.
Yes,
Wow.
we have just about 2 minutes to go.
Okay.
I don't know how you manage it. Was the Nigerian factor an area of concern as you moved, as you managed this institution, NSIA? And then what's next? You've been in Goldman Sachs, you've been in JP Morgan, you've been MD, UBS Investment Bank. What's next for you?
What is Nigeria factor? What is Nigeria factor, Ruben? And I ask that question with a sense of, I understand what you're asking. These factors are just stakeholder management. In every society, you have to manage your stakeholders, be it in recruiting, be it in deciding where to invest. It just, over time, if your stakeholder trusts you, you'll be fine. And I think we're at that point where our stakeholders trust us. I mean, healthcare, for example, is an area of maximum impact for us. We've seen just Luth Cancer Center alone in the last 18 months has had 200,000 patient encounters. 200,000. We've seen the toll roads, Second Niger Bridge, Lagos-Ibadan, Abuja-Kano Road. At least the Kaduna to Kano Zaria end is done. Abuja-Kaduna work is ongoing. We've seen agriculture, fertilizer initiative. We've seen investments in tech. We've seen a lot of other investments. And I think the fact that NSIA could do that. Tomorrow we're commissioning a big agri project in Nasarawa State, Panda Agric, which we did with our Old Mutual, which I think is going to be fantastic. That farm is yielding about 7 tons a hectare, as against 2 for the average Nigerian farm. This is in partnership with Old Mutual and a Dutch investment company. So the point I'm making is, in all of this, that's not an excuse for not, the Nigerian factor is not an excuse for not achieving some level of success. If anything, I have actually believed, with the support of the Minister of Finance, the Chief of Staff to the President, all the ministers I've worked with, my board in particular, my management team, and the NSIA staff. It's a small place, right? Everyone works extremely hard at NSIA. All the staff that work at NSIA, we've managed to achieve all of this and overcome what you may call the so-called Nigeria factor. So we're very happy. I'm very happy with where things are. What's next? What's next is a bit of rest, catch my breath. There are just so many things that one can still do. And I look forward to the NSIA being able to play a significant role in a few areas. There are a couple of things I would love to see us continue to do. One is maintain all these areas of focus that we have been very active. Hopefully next year, commission the Second Niger Bridge. It's almost done, 90-something%, finish Abuja-Kaduna Road and Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. But also work on asset remedial. I mean, last time I was here, one of the things we spoke about was taking some moribund industrial assets and turning them into something that works. We've created a unit now. The managing director will be driving that unit along with a couple of staff that and the senior person who's joined the organization to now drive that. So those are the things I expect to see happen.
Okay, thank you very much, Uche Orji, and congratulations on your successful tour of duty and for coming back home to serve your country. We hope that your example will inspire others.
Thank you.
We wish you all the best.